for the morning. And it is a short parable, and it just bristles with stuff. It's got so much going on. And I'll try to suggest some of that, but I'll never be able to adequately deal with it. You know the parable. It comes from Luke. It's chapter 18. And this is toward the end of the journey Jesus is making to Jerusalem. Okay? And some scholars say that part of this parable is the way Luke puts it in a setting and then carries Luke's conclusion. Okay? So in other words, a lot of scholars would say that the heart of the passage, and I'll identify, is where Jesus is actually talking. Other parts are written by Luke, both an opening and then a conclusion. Let me say the other side. Other scholars say we don't really have the means to make those determinations. Truth of the matter is we don't know. Okay? So there it is, and more. One scholar says, look, this parable is part of the scripture. It's part of the text. It doesn't matter. It's the whole text is for the church to read and to deal with being the community of faith. I want to know what the first two say, but I think I finally believe the third one. That's kind of where I come down. I want to know what God is saying through this text to the church, and I want to hear all of it, even if I've got questions about some of it. Okay? Question means knowing who wrote or who said what. Am I saying that plain enough? I do believe the Holy Spirit works with the text. So we don't worship the text. We worship the God who works through the text with the community of faith that is striving to understand and hear what God is saying to us. When you read the Bible alone, I would urge you always at the end of that reading to say, God, what are you saying to me in my reading of this text? Okay? Hear what I'm trying to get at? All right, let's hear the text. He, meaning Jesus, also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. You say, that sounds like a seminary professor. I know all these stuff. You folks who don't, that kind of thing. All right. I actually don't think that, but nevertheless. Then Jesus, it's in quotes. These are the words of Jesus as Luke reports them. By the way, we don't have this parable anywhere else. Okay. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. All right. Now, the Pharisee, standing by himself. Why is he standing by himself? You ever asked that question? We'll talk about it. Was praying this way. God, I thank you that I am not like other people. Thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. Okay? I fast twice a week. Any of y'all do that? I don't. I give 1/10 of all my income. This is a righteous boy. Okay? Next piece. But the tax collector, standing far off, in other words, he's away from the rest of the people in the temple. Now remember, the tax collector is standing by himself. And the Pharisee is standing by himself, and the tax collector is standing far off. And this tax collector would not even look up to heaven. Praying but won't look up. But was beating his breast. That's a sharp sign of repentance and wanting God to hear you and wanting to do something in response to God. Beating his breast and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Now, then the text moves away from the quote of Jesus. All right? And there's this statement. This is Jesus. I tell you, this man went down to his home justified. He's talking about the tax collector, went down to his home justified. We'll work on that in a minute. Rather than the other man, the Pharisee. And then Luke says this. It's not in quotes. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, but all who humble themselves will be exalted. Okay? I don't know about you, but when I am undisciplined and when I don't do shucks in terms of faithfulness, boy, do I love that parable. Any of y'all like that? Hey, God, I'm a senior. I'm a sinner, and I didn't do squat this week. And I am humble, dear God. And I'm justified. Any of you ever run into that? Amy Jill asked the question a good way. She says, what about the people who say, I'm humble, and God, I just want you to know I thank you that I'm not like that Pharisee. Ooh, ain't that something? You don't suppose Jesus could have been thinking something like that, do you? You see, you got to watch Jesus in the parables because he's always sneaking up on you, and he's trying to not blow up people, but blow up a situation where we become too complacent with the way we see the world. He's always, subverting, if you will, ways of misusing the faith, accommodating to the world, or whatever. All right, so that's the reading of the text. May God bless the reading of the text. Let's look at a few things. Let's look at the Pharisee first. He obeys the law. My hunch is he obeys more of the law than any of us in this room. Am I wrong about that? How many of us know all the things the law requires? I don't. I've read the scripture a time or two, but all the way through, but I don't know all the laws. I'm clear about one thing. I've not obeyed them all. He says he does. Amy Jill says that Pharisees are respected teachers. They're not typically in the temple, but they're in the neighborhood teaching. Okay, now that may be important later. All right. But he's standing by himself. Why is he standing by himself? Some people say, some scholars, he doesn't want to be contaminated, made impure by anybody else. Ooh. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never sat in one part of the church to be away from somebody else. We were down at Oklahoma City University where St. Paul has one of its two campuses. And at the time, I had just become chair of the board at St. Paul. And we decided to have a closed meeting. You can do that when you talk about salaries and stuff like that. So I called a closed meeting and we voted on it. We said to do it and we did it. Now, what I was supposed to do afterwards was to call us back into open session before we adjourned. Well, it was my first session. I didn't remember that. I didn't do it. So after the meeting had been adjourned, at that point, not licitly, again, not my intention, but nevertheless, I hadn't done it right. The word is attacked by someone, not on the board, but someone who had been sent out for the time of the closed meeting. I mean, it really went after me. I don't know when I've been that severely attacked in some time. And I didn't like it much. And I think I told her so, more gently than she had. Well, so we go into this room where we're going to have worship with the university. And I sit down before I realize she's right in front of me. So we're sitting together, not the place I would have chosen. I would have rather been standing by myself than have been there. I know y'all have never had this experience. What's bad is not the worship service. What's bad is not the sermon. What's bad is Holy Communion. And so they read us that part of the text about forgiveness, confessing your sins to each other, and offering each other the peace of Christ. Holy, never mind. When we come to that point, I have got to say the peace of Christ, and she's got to say the peace of Christ back to me with the person sitting in front of you. She turns, and there I am, having to say, peace of Christ. And she says, peace of Christ. So when the thing ends, I'm sitting by a guy I know real well, and I said to him, let me tell you, the Eucharist, Holy Communion, is tough. You know what he said to me? He did not relieve me one bit. You know what he said? Is this the first time you ever realized that participating in Holy Communion was an ass-kicking situation? Meaning by that you get your butt kicked when you take this thing seriously. The Pharisee was standing by himself. Okay? All right. Let's look at the tax collector. And I want to come back at this. Tax collector is clearly a sinner. All right? The way he sees himself. He won't even look up to pray to God. He's got his head down. He's beating his chest. God, be merciful to me. Have you ever been in a situation where you really needed God's mercy? And you pray for God's mercy? Well, this old boy apparently is doing it. Now, look over here with me a minute. At least Jesus is quoted as saying, this man, meaning the sinner, went home justified. Now remember these dikey words we talk about? All right. What is dikey? What do those words have to do with? Remember, in the Hebrew, you don't have the dikey words, you have the Zedek words. They occur over 500 times. In the New Testament, you'd have dikey words. They occur some 92 times in 85 passages. These are not minor concerns. This word, dedi kaiomenes, is translated justified. All right. The man went home in the right relationship with God. Now, the way I was taught to read that parable, and the way you probably were taught to read it, was that the guy who was merciful, he was justified and made right with God. Meanwhile, this blooming Pharisee, what a jerk. He thinks he's obeyed all the law. What if he has? What if he's not connected with the temple? I'll talk about that in a minute. What if he is standing by himself not to be polluted? Is he in any sense being faithful? Or is he doing what he was taught? Now watch another funny thing in this parable. It says in the text I read, that he went home justified rather than like the Pharisee. In other words, he was justified, the Pharisee was not. That's the reading I just gave you. Amy Jill Levine asked this question. She says, this language here is a para plus accusative. What that means is it can be translated very differently than rather than. It can be translated as alongside the other, or because of the other, or on account of the other. She's saying you could read that the person who had been faithful to the law was also justified, and the people who had been a sinner but pled for God's mercy and for God's forgiveness, that both of them went home justified. What does that do? I don't know about you, but that blows up my party tent. That's not the way I've normally read the text. Now, please understand, I am not trying to convince you that Amy Jill is correct, okay? I'm going to give you another alternative reading, and I'm not trying to suggest to you that that's the only way to read it either. I'm going to look at two readings. But what I do want you to do, I want you to be disturbed by it, because I think that's what Jesus wants to happen. A parable is always disrupting the world, so we don't become settled and accommodated. And okay, are we talking to each other? And remember, our faith is in Jesus. So let me suggest you look at the way Amy Jill is doing this in one way. The ancient world, in fact, there's a sense, I know in Ezekiel you've got this comment that says, the soul that sins shall die. In other words, it recognizes there is a personal dimension to sin. Okay? The soul that sins will die. It's not the whole community dies because some of you sinned or what, you know. Okay. That's not an individualism. Be careful you don't confuse that with what happened in the West in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries. Okay, well, sometime let's talk about that so we can do it carefully and lay them all out, because it's really good to critique the way we think with that stuff. It was life-altering to me. But these folks in that world thought corporately, like a we, not just a me. You understand what I'm saying? Let me put it another way. Peggy and I were in Kenya, and you know, I wake up early. I can't sleep late. It kills me to sleep late. Hate to sleep late, you know. I woke up one morning, and as soon as it was daylight, I didn't want to be trucking around out there in the dark, you know, but as soon as the daylight, I had dressed and I went on outside. Just so happened that the bus driver, who was Kenyan, was out there kind of wiping around on the bus. So I walked up to him and I said, did you sleep well? And he said, if you did, I did. If you did, I did. He understood whether he had slept well in relationship to the community. Let me ask you, Just think about what that would, well, let me think of a couple of examples that might work. Any of you ever feel good, but a child of yours had a terrible night, and somebody calls you on the phone and asks you how things are going, and you say, boy, we had a tough night last night. You feel great, but you're so wedded to that child. What if you're in a community where some kind of similar wedding to the community carries that kind of power, impact, bonding? Am I communicating? You know what I'm trying to say? So, sorry, I don't have anything. I went to the doctor, my GP. He told me I didn't have anything. So I'm not COVID. I'm just allergied. I think you could take Amy Jill Levine's comments, put them in a powerful communal context. What would happen if you thought about this parable? I'm going to leave this in a minute, but what if you thought about this parable? That people receive mercy through forgiveness, but they also receive mercy through a certain kind of faithfulness that involves obeying the law. Am I communicating? What happens if Jesus is pushing this at us to disrupt the way we think? For example, you know what? I know these people, they don't smoke, drink, chew, or cuss. And they think that makes them right with the Lord. They're righteous Pharisees.
They're living the way that they were taught in the synagogue.
You know that Amy Jill says exactly that. They were doing what they were taught.
Haven't seen enough of the world.
Huh?
Haven't seen enough of the world.
Haven't seen enough of the world. Yeah. Yeah. And can you derive too much comfort from just saying, look, I ain't done any of that stuff, but I'm a sinner, God. Be nice to me. Yeah, come on, Dick.
I have a nephew who is ultra conservative.
Uh-huh.
And the thing that bugs me is he really knows his Bible well.
Well, yeah.
I mean, and he has a full set of Spurgeon's sermons.
Oh my,
He loves
yeah.
them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's okay to have, but to love them is a whole different thing.
Uh-huh.
And he's told me several times I'm going to hell
Uh-huh.
because of several things.
Yeah.
And I kind of sloughed it off. The last time, well, now he is sick.
He's what?
He's sick.
He's sick, yeah.
Very sick.
Very sick.
And we visit him rather often.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this guy thinking, I don't like visiting him.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of enjoy being told I'm going to hell. It makes me feel right. But I've had to look at him and ask God to forgive me for being so judgmental. It gets vicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what
yeah.
we're talking about here.
Oh, I share your experience. You can imagine teaching in a seminary where you have at least 8 or 10 of those folks come into the seminary every year. And you're trying to say to yourself, do I really want to find a way that I can, without being caught, kill them all? Or do I really attempt to teach them? Yeah. Now, then I get to be the guy who's got to plead for mercy and think I'm in good shape. Is there a sense in which both of these are called into question? Not only one who needs mercy, but the one who's righteous. And a God who justifies them both.
Well, we're being kind of judgmental when we look at the motives of either one of them.
Huh.
If we are looking
Yeah.
at the motives of the Pharisee or the motives of personal motives of the tax collector,
Mm-hmm.
we're being I'm making a judgment.
Oh, I tell you, I'll bet 1,000 times I've said, God, I thank you that I'm not like that Pharisee. You know, anybody else ever do that? Anybody ever say to yourself, you know, so-and-so at Platwoods Church, he's just like that Pharisee. I'm so glad I'm not like that. Jesus nails our butts to the floor with this parable. You know? But then what about those of us, and I'm never lazy, of course, when it comes to faith. What about those of us who are lazy when it comes to faithfulness? And we say, well, you know, it's kind of interesting. It's a good thing, you know, all you got to do is confess and you're in great shape. Oh boy. Oh boy. You know what is tough about Jesus? It's just hard to get around him. Okay? Yeah, please. I'm not saying this is the correct interpretation. I am trying to make the best case for Amy Jill's interpretation I can make. We'll turn to another one in a minute.
Well, I think it comes down to our intention. What's the Pharisee's intention in his heart? What does he really believe? And the same thing for the tax collector. That's why Jesus gives us these parables, in my mind, is for us to look at our own intentions, our own heart, our own soul, and make a decision about which direction we're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was raised Catholic, so every couple of weeks you could go to confession. The priest says, you know, I absolve you of your sins, say a rosary, and you're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Hell, there it is.
in your heart, you have to deal with that.
And I would hope you haven't altogether thrown out the Catholic position.
Not all of it, no.
There is still a place for people who feel they've been wrong and they need mercy. Huh? I mean, anybody see that differently? You want to challenge that one? And yes, please.
I'm wondering, the Pharisee standing by himself. Why? One interpretation might be that he thinks he don't want to get contaminated by these other sinners around him. But maybe he's being ostracized by the group of people around him. He thinks he's so holy. I don't want to associate it. I don't want to be with him. So maybe nobody wants to stand by him. And why do we automatically assume that the tax collector is a sinner? He's doing a job. He may have been picked out by Rome, saying, "You're educated. You got to do this for us." Or else.
You sneaky devil. That's exactly the transition into the second reading of it. Okay. And remember this: there is more than one. Okay, reading of it, and understand what I'm trying to do. I am not trying to make this text unimportant. I am trying to suggest how many ways it can be disruptive. My hunch about Jesus is that he could tell parables in a way that would just get at just about everybody in a group. You know, and I don't think there was any question that Jesus loved everybody in the group. So don't miss that. Okay. Let me go to another one. This is Herzog. I don't believe William Herzog's notion altogether either. But watch what he says. He says there were Pharisees that were part of the Judaism of the time. Remember that now. Don't turn this into an anti-Semitic thing or an anti-Judaism thing. We're talking about a time in which there was serious conflict between the emerging church and some of the kind of compromised relationships on this view between official Judaism and the Roman Empire. So the view here would say he's a Pharisee, a Judaism that is implicated with Rome. He would say that there are two kinds of taxes. more than that, but let's keep this so we can manage it. If you want to read it, there's a 20-page piece on it in this Herzog book that I showed you last week. 2 taxes here, one from Rome and one from the temple. And what he says is that both of these were a terrible burden on the people of that time. So that what you have here is with the Pharisee, a representative of people who are taxing folks through the temple and taxing them for more money than they could afford. And this was on top of the kind of taxes being offered by Rome. So that he, the Pharisee, is a representative of a taxing structure in that world. All right, let me try to put it this way. Suppose that all of us in the room had an income of about $18,000 a year. Okay? And suppose we were in a world, I'll take that back. Let's say that 90% of us, let's see if we're 30 this morning, somebody do the math, 9 into 30 will go 3 times, isn't that right? About 3 of us would have not be poor and peasant, but 27 of us would be. Okay. Now, Plattwood's church is part of the society, and it has the power to tax you along with the United States. And you're making $18,000 a year, is that what I said? And you're required to pay, let's say $1,000, let's say $1,500 to Rome and $1,000 to Plattwood's church. What are you going to think about Pharisees? What are you going to think when he says, I obey the law? All of it. I fast. I give 10% of my money. Yeah, but he makes more. He makes more. He's part of the tax collection agency. And when he kneels to pray, he says, God, I think I'm not like these other people. Because plain fact is, if 32 of you have to pay that much tax, you can't afford it. So a good many of you don't. You don't tithe. And what does that mean? You aren't clean. And this guy says, I give 10%. And you're talking to a bunch of peasants. We're talking, Peter and James and John, and just regular folks. They meet on the road to Jerusalem. This guy's telling you, I'm a good guy. What are you going to say? Any of you got a word you can say in the room? Remember, I use biblical words like, you
leech.
Huh?
You leech.
He's an SOB. He's a lying, conniving, oppressive representative of Rome, as well as screwing over the temple. The temple is lost. How does that scene change if you look at it that way? George, you look like you're about to say something. Come on. Y'all can take me on, for crying out loud. Don't sit there and, well, you don't want to disagree with Tex. Of course you do.
If the church or Judaism didn't exist, Rome would just walk all over everybody.
Ah, that's
Rome
nice.
walked over everybody.
That's nice.
At least there was some
That's nice.
help back there.
That's nice. Oh, yeah, that's nice. Listen, anytime you get a totalitarian regime, you get, oh, I love it, resistance. There's a wonderful book, The Weapons of the Weak, by James Scott. And he argues in there, there's never a time when a totalitarian state of any kind, and we get it in the United States, and we're not totalitarian yet. When you get a totalitarian state, and especially in these peasant societies, the peasants find all kinds of ways to resist. For example, one scholar talks about how a parade is going through this village, and the king is on a stallion leading the parade. And these peasants bow down to the king. And you know what they then do? They fart. Huh? They resist. In the oil field, you know, we'd be working. I was in a gang, roustabouts. We worked in the field, not on the deck. And, oh God, I loved it when the new engineer, and we had some great, sagacious engineers who'd been in the field. They knew their stuff, so I'm not knocking engineers. But we had a guy right out of the University of Mississippi State University. He comes out there and he's got a blueprint, and it's abstract. And he's got a pipe coming in from a header way over, from a well way over yonder, and it's coming into a header, which is where a number of pipes come together. And we got a snarl of pipes that have been just put in there as they occurred, you know. And his blueprint, you cannot do. Well, it's pretty easy what the solution is, but you need to have been there and thought it through, okay? So this engineer, he's 23 years old. He comes out there, and he looks at it and he said, well, I can see why you called me. Obviously, we've got a problem here, and I need to solve it. The gang had already solved it. Okay, we knew what to do, but we couldn't do it until we had his permission. He said, why don't you do this? Why don't you just come across here with that 2-inch line, do a stack right here with me, elbow up here, elbow down here, hit it right into the header. You know what the gang is doing? I see what you mean. Yes, sir. I think we can do it. That's a good idea. Yes, sir. That's fine. All right, we'll do it. We'll do it. So the engineer, okay, you guys got it? We okay? We got it. Thank you very much. So he gets in the truck, goes back there. As he's leaving, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but as he's leaving, let me tell you what 2 or 3 of the gang is doing. One of them is saying, I know what you do. You come out here and obviously you dumbasses, you don't understand. You got to come up here with a standpipe and then go into the head. Why in the hell didn't we ever think of something smart like that? We are so bleeping dumb. That's what one was doing. Another one saying, yeah, he's got that down pat. That little old blueprint he drew, you know, maybe he ought to draw one so when he makes love at night, he'll know how to do it. You understand? Also, the resistance always went to love making for some reason. Maybe not always. And then one guy, now don't be offended. One guy, as soon as he's sure that the engineer can't see back, but the engineer is still in the truck down the road, so help me God. He pulls out his penis and starts shaking it at the engineer as he disappears on that gravel road over the hill. Would you call that resistance? Now, always think about how people who were peasants in Scripture also found ways to resist. Do you understand what I'm trying to suggest here? No oppression, no oppressor has complete control of a population. What they will do is find some way to resist. It is magnificent tactically. There's a scholar who talks about, he says, the powerful set up places, and the powerless set up spaces in those places to resist. There's another wonderful story about and then I'll get off this, but don't ever forget it because it's so important. There's a wonderful story about this auto maker line, where they put the cars together. And I don't remember the reason, but for some reason, people on the line are just irritated with the company for some reason. This is a positive engineer story. I want you to know I've got those too. So one of the guys who's working with this huge machine, he knows how to turn that thing off so that it looks like it's broken down. So he does it, stops the whole line, right? This engineer comes out and he looks at the guy in that machine. He's located where the problem is. I mean, it's in the big machine. He says, look, how long do you want this thing down? 3 hours? 8 hours? I'll tell you what, if you'll tell me how long you want it down, I'll tell them it's going to take me that many hours to fix it. And then at the end of that time, you do what you need to do to make it work again. That's a very smart engineer. You know what? That's exactly what he did. Got it? What am I trying to say here? You can have some real resistance. Who said that? Was that you, George? Who talked about the resistance? George, you bet you can have resistance. Okay. You don't suppose Jesus might have ever encouraged that, do you? With Rome? How do you resist Rome without being public about it, but finding the spaces to do so? Okay. Now let's go back here. Amy Jill puts the Pharisee in the very best kind of framework. All right. Now this guy, see the way I can't remember names, Herzog. Herzog interprets the Pharisee quite differently. He's a tax collector too. He does all these things of obeying the law, but he's a part of the oppressive bureaucracy, taking money from his own people that they don't have. And because he's obeying laws of the Torah, he fails to see his guilt and his participation in the oppression of Rome. So that when this other toll collector says, or when it says that he is justified and this guy isn't. Hear the way that? Yeah. Okay. I don't know, when I read these parables, and I've been helped by these scholars to get in touch with the original language. So, God, it just has that kind of torque in it. It just jerks you around and makes you have to face into the faith in different ways. That's good. I don't know about you. That's good for me. I can get very, very much too happy with myself. I know I'm the only one in the room, but I do that, and every time I read one of these damn parables, it shakes the hell out of me. That's what they're supposed to do. Okay? That's what they're supposed to do.
Can I say something?
Please.
What I've seen as I've sat in this class and read the scriptures and the parables, there's an additional element to me as well as a mother who has children. No matter how bad or good you are or think you are, there is a loving God that still accepts you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a testimony of both the Hebrew text and the New Testament. Different ways of sorts, but yeah, there is a loving God. And that, of course, is one of the things that's is pulsing Amy Jill, but also Herzog, but they see them differently. You know, I in a sense don't want to lose the repertoire of interpretations of a parable, because what I find them doing is jutting up more of the kinds of things I need to care about. You hear what I'm saying? And I think that's what we got here. So obviously, remember this man is over here. Herzog interprets him not as a tax collector. A tax collector is the bigwig, okay? He buys the opportunity to do taxes, which means he not only gets taxes for Rome of a certain amount, but he can also add to them, so he gets money as well. So a tax collector is kind of part of the elite in the tax collection bureaucracy. Got the picture? But Herzog says this guy is a toll collector. He uses the word, how did I not put that up? I'll tell you, sometimes, yeah. Come on, baby. I even put this stuff in red so I can find it, and still I can't find it. Where are you? Oh, I know I'm in the wrong place. Telonis, that's my word. This in the Hebrew and the Greek text calls this guy Telonis. All right. E-S. I-S. E-S. What does that mean? He's a functionary. Okay. If you are a tax collector, you are arc Telonis. You get the picture? Huh? This guy, according to Herzog, is a low-level bureaucrat who's not making much money. How does that change the picture? He's barely making it too, but he is making it on the back of his own people. And when he makes enough to live, what's he doing? He's cutting into the livelihood of his own people. What does that do?
So I was mad at the Congress for passing the Tax Act, and now I'm mad at the IRS guy for collecting.
Or the Jackson County assessor.
Yeah. I worked in the oil field after my senior year of high school and then the 4 years of college. So I was there 5 summers. First summer I worked with a pipe pulling truck. I drove the truck, and there was a black guy who worked with me. I was 18. He was 30. He knew 100 times more about the oil field, more than that, than I did. Okay?
Yeah, he'd been there
forever. Yeah, I mean, well, 5 or 8 or 10 years. We're both making the minimum wage. I am in charge of the truck. Why? I'm a white guy. All right? But we're making the same money. Let's see, what was it then? Was it 75 cents an hour? That'd been 1953. I don't remember, but wasn't making much. I worked all summer and I had enough money to pay my first semester's tuition at Louisiana State University. You know. Next year, I'm on my way to Kansas wheat fields because I think I can get a ton of dough out there. That was crazy. But Daddy runs into Doc Robbins, who was a doctor for the athletic teams at my high school, and I was a pitcher and so on. Yeah. Hey, how's Tex doing? Well, he's home right now packing and getting ready to go to the wheat fields of Kansas tomorrow. Doc Robbins said, why the hell is he doing that? He said, well, you got to make enough money to go to school. And he said, Well, that ain't the way to do it. Why didn't he go out here and ask, Benny London for a job in the oil field? He can work out there and make a whole lot more money than he can make in the wheat field. Daddy said, well, I don't know. He said, he knows his kids, but he doesn't know him. He said, well, I know him. Do you mind if I call him? Now, I'm the son of the guy that owns the cab stand, which is not a status outfit in Brookhaven. Do you understand? I mean, we're okay. We're lower middle class, but, this doctor's interested in me. Why? I pitched for the baseball team. He calls the guy at the California company, Benny London, good guy. I'm not putting down anybody in this picture. And he says, oh, yeah, tell that boy to get him a metal hat and steel-toed boots and show up tomorrow morning. I spent the rest of the afternoon getting steel-toed boots and a metal hat. And I go out there, and I am making, in the oil field, I was making 75 cents the previous summer an hour. I was making $2.10 an hour in 1954. Do you know that you could provide for a family on that kind of money then? I knew people who did. Right? And here's my point. I could go to school almost the entirety of the next year simply by, oh my gosh, you've got to tell me. Here's the point. I could go to school the rest of the year on that money. It was great. I did that for 4 years. Also paid for most of my first year seminary. In the oil field was a black guy, 45 years of age. He did all the electrical work, plumbing work, carpentry work, and any kind of building we might have or whatever. Okay, did all that work in the oil field. He made 75 cents an hour. I'm not equating the two, but you might think of the Pharisee like me, and you might think about this other guy, the black guy. He's the sinner. Probably hasn't paid his taxes. Why? Okay, we got to stop. All that's to say, folks, Jesus is this magnificent teacher. And I would want to say, don't ever feel that we've got it all together, but to stay open through the Spirit to the way in which Jesus continually comes at us to challenge us and disrupt us because he doesn't love us. No, because he does. Ain't that a deal? So go in peace, and may the God of peace go with you.